Disney didn't just sell you movies. They sold you a slave morality disguised as virtue, and you swallowed it whole. Every frame, every song, every hero's journey was a psychological operation designed to make you compliant, passive, and utterly incapable of seizing real power. You learn to wait for permission. You learn that goodness is rewarded by some cosmic force. You learn that ambition is the mark of the villain. And now you sit in your cubicle wondering why the ruthless sociopath 3 desks over just got promoted while you're still waiting for someone to notice your kindness. Let me be clear about what happened to you. From the moment you could process narrative, you were fed a steady diet of moral anesthesia. The hero always wins because he's good. The villain always loses because he's greedy. Kindness is rewarded. Patience is virtue. Wait your turn. Play by the rules. The universe has a moral arc and it bends toward justice. This is the most profitable lie ever sold to the masses, and you bought it without question. You internalized it so deeply that you can't even see the cage anymore. You think your moral framework is your identity when it's actually your prison. Watch what happens in these stories. The protagonist is pure of heart, oppressed by those with power, and eventually rescued by magic, luck, or the benevolence of a stronger force. Cinderella doesn't seize power. She waits. She endures. She's rewarded for her compliance with a prince who chose her. Simba doesn't architect his return to power through strategic dominance. He's literally told by the ghost of his father that it's his destiny. Moana is chosen by the ocean itself. Elsa has powers she didn't earn. The entire narrative structure is designed to teach you that power comes to those who wait, who suffer nobly, who maintain their moral purity while others do the dirty work of actually acquiring resources and status. This is slave morality in its purest form. You were taught to make a virtue out of your weakness. You were taught that your lack of power is actually a sign of your superiority. The meek shall inherit the earth, right? Except they won't. They never have, they never will. The meek will inherit nothing but the scraps left by those who understood that power isn't given, it's taken. But you can't see this because you've been conditioned to believe that even wanting power makes you the villain. Ambition became greed, strategy became manipulation, self-interest became selfishness. They inverted every instinct that would have made you dangerous and repackaged it as evil. Now look at your financial reality. Look at the correlation between how deeply you consume these narratives and your economic position. The people who succeed in wealth accumulation don't operate within the moral framework you were sold. They don't wait their turn. They don't believe goodness is rewarded by market forces. They understand that the market is immoral, that opportunity belongs to whoever seizes it first, and that your commitment to playing fair is just another competitive disadvantage they can exploit. While you were learning that the greedy villain always gets his comeuppance, they were learning that greed is simply wanting more, and that wanting more is the engine of all achievement. The corporate world is the clearest demonstration of this domestication. You show up early, you work hard, you're kind to everyone. You believe that merit will be recognized, that dedication will be rewarded, that if you just keep being good, someone will notice. And then you watch as the person who takes credit for your work, who networks ruthlessly, who understands that visibility matters more than virtue, climbs past you. You feel resentment. You feel that this is unfair. You retreat further into your moral superiority, telling yourself that at least you have integrity, at least you can sleep at night, at least you're a good person. This is the comfort of weakness. This is the consolation prize for those who never develop the will to power. Your entire moral operating system is designed to keep you in the herd. Be kind means be predictable. Wait your turn means never seize opportunity when it appears. The villain is greedy means you should feel shame for wanting more than your assigned station. Every Disney movie programmed you to seek validation from the collective rather than domination over your circumstances. You need others to affirm that you're good, that you're right, that you're worthy. This need for external validation is the chain that keeps you enslaved. The powerful don't seek validation. They create the standards by which others are judged. This is why you celebrate fictional heroes but never become one. The hero's journey you were sold requires no actual agency. It requires endurance, moral purity, and waiting for external forces to recognize your worth. But real power requires the opposite. It requires you to reject the moral framework imposed by those who benefit from your compliance. It requires you to create your own values rather than accepting the values that keep you manageable. It requires you to understand that the universe is indifferent to your goodness, and that resources flow to those who understand how to capture them, not to those who deserve them by some imaginary moral calculus. The financial implications are devastating. Your net worth is a direct reflection of your willingness to operate outside the moral constraints you were programmed to accept. Every time you hesitate because something feels too aggressive, too self-interested, too ambitious, you're allowing someone without those constraints to take what could have been yours. Every time you wait for permission, someone else is taking action. Every time you play fair, someone else is rewriting the rules in their favor. You think this makes you better than them. It doesn't. It makes you poorer than them. And poverty is not a virtue, no matter how much your Disney adult psychology tries to convince you otherwise. The people building generational wealth understand something you were never taught. Morality is a tool, not a truth. It's a social construct that serves specific power structures. When you internalize the morality of the herd, you become manageable, predictable, and useful to those who create the narratives. You become the perfect employee, the perfect consumer, the perfect citizen. You work hard, you don't cause trouble, you accept your position, and you find meaning in your moral superiority over those who actually accumulate power. This is the domestication. This is how entertainment weaponized your potential against you. This is why you're capable of understanding power, but incapable of wielding it. You were turned into a moral sheep, and the wolves are feeding well. The question you must answer now is simple and brutal. Can you even recognize the cage anymore, or has it become so comfortable that you mistake it for freedom? Because here's what separates those who accumulate actual power from those who merely consume content about it. The willingness to operate in the space beyond the moral frameworks that were installed in you before you could think critically. The elite wealth builders, the ones constructing empires while you debate ethics on social media, they understood something fundamental that Disney made sure you never would. They understood that markets don't care about your virtue. Capital flows to those who create value and capture it ruthlessly, not to those who waited their turn and played by rules designed to keep them stationary. Look at how the actual architects of wealth operate. They don't ask permission. They don't wait for consensus. They identify what they want, and they construct the systems to acquire it. When you see a billionaire, you're not looking at someone who internalized the lessons of Simba waiting to become king or Cinderella waiting to be rescued. You're looking at someone who rejected the entire moral operating system that keeps the herd docile. They transvalued. They looked at what society called good and evil, and they asked the only question that matters: does this serve my expansion, or does it constrain it? Everything that serves expansion gets kept. Everything else gets discarded like the psychological garbage it always was. This is what someone meant when they talked about creating your own values. But let me translate that from philosophy into finance, because abstract concepts don't build wealth. Creating your own values means you stop accepting the market positioning that others assign to you. You stop being the commodity and you become the platform. You stop trading time for money and you start trading systems for equity. You stop asking what's fair and you start asking what's possible. The person still operating on Disney morality looks at a market opportunity and asks, is this right? The person who transvalued looks at the same opportunity and asks, can I execute this before someone else does? One of these people stays middle class. The other builds generational wealth. The difference isn't intelligence. It's the willingness to operate outside the moral framework designed to keep you weak. Let me give you the pattern you need to recognize. Every single disruptive innovation that created massive wealth came from someone who looked at the existing rules and said, those rules don't apply to me. Uber didn't ask taxi commissions for permission. Airbnb didn't ask hotel regulators if it was okay. Amazon didn't check with retail unions before optimizing them out of existence. These weren't accidents. These were conscious decisions to reject the herd morality that says you need approval, you need consensus. You need to make sure everyone's comfortable with your expansion. The comfortable don't disrupt. The compliant don't innovate. The kind don't dominate. And domination is what we're discussing here, not because domination is inherently virtuous, but because domination is what actually changes your material conditions while virtue signaling keeps you exactly where you are. The wealth strategy has 3 components, and you need all 3, or you're just playing at power. First is creative destruction. You must be willing to destroy what exists to create what you want. That job you hate, it needs to die so the business you build can live. That comfortable salary, it needs to be sacrificed so the equity you're accumulating can compound. That reputation as a nice person who always helps, it needs to burn so you can become someone who helps selectively and charges premium for the privilege. The herd calls this ruthless. The architects call this Tuesday. You're going to have to decide which vocabulary you want to adopt because you can't speak both languages simultaneously. Second is self-overcoming through skill accumulation, but not the skills the system tells you to acquire. The system wants you to be competent enough to be useful, but not dangerous enough to be independent. You need to become dangerous. That means learning the skills that create asymmetric advantages, copywriting that actually moves people to action, sales psychology that closes without begging, capital allocation that compounds faster than inflation destroys, negotiation that extracts maximum value from every interaction. These aren't the skills they teach in compliance training. These are the skills that separate employees from owners, and owners from empire builders. Every hour you spend consuming entertainment is an hour someone else spent acquiring leverage over you. This isn't motivation. This is mathematics. Third is the complete internalization that you are the source of value, not the recipient of it. This might be the hardest psychological shift because Disney spent decades convincing you that value comes from external validation. The prince validates Cinderella. The kingdom validates Simba. The beast's transformation validates Belle. It's always external. It's always someone else conferring worth upon the protagonist. But actual power works in reverse. You create value and the market reorganizes around you. You don't wait to be discovered. You don't hope to be chosen. You build something so undeniable that attention and capital have no choice but to flow toward it. The difference between these 2 orientations is the difference between a career and an empire. Now let's address the dangerous truth that makes people uncomfortable. Nice people stay poor not because the universe is unfair, but because niceness is a resource allocation strategy that prioritizes others' comfort over your expansion. Every time you say yes when you should say no, you're transferring your time and energy to someone else's priorities. Every time you undercharge because you don't want to seem greedy, you're subsidizing someone else's profit margin with your own poverty. Every time you avoid conflict to keep the peace, you're accepting whatever terms others impose on you. This is why nice people make excellent employees and terrible entrepreneurs. Employment rewards compliance. Entrepreneurship rewards the ability to impose your will on markets, and you cannot impose your will if you're constantly seeking approval. The ruthless build empires not because they're evil, but because they've rejected the moral framework that makes accumulation shameful. They understand something the herd never will. Wealth is not a reward for virtue. Wealth is a consequence of value creation and value capture, and the capture part requires you to be comfortable taking what you've earned without apologizing for it. The person still operating on slave morality creates value and then feels guilty about capturing it. They undercharge, they overdeliver, they seek validation through sacrifice, and they stay broke while feeling morally superior to those who actually accumulated. This is the trap. This is the cage. This is what Disney installed in you. You want to know who operates beyond good and evil in markets? Look at private equity. They buy companies, strip out inefficiency, fire everyone who doesn't produce multiple times their cost, restructure the entire operation for maximum extraction, and sell for massive returns. The herd calls this predatory. The architects call this optimization. Who's right? Neither. Both. The question is irrelevant. What matters is one group is building wealth, and the other group is tweeting about how unfair it is. You need to decide which group you're joining, because the middle ground is just another form of herd mentality. The belief that you can have power without making anyone uncomfortable. Here's what I want you to do right now. Comment below and tell me what Disney movie damaged your psychology the most. Was it the one that taught you to wait for true love instead of building power? Was it the one that convinced you the villain is always the ambitious one? Was it the one that made you believe goodness is rewarded when you can look around and see that's demonstrably false? I want to know which specific narrative is still running in your head, preventing you from operating at full capacity. And more importantly, tell me which virtue you're ready to sacrifice for actual power. Is it the need to be liked? The need to be fair? The need to make sure everyone's comfortable with your success? Because you're going to have to sacrifice something. The question is whether you choose what to sacrifice, or whether circumstances choose for you. This is tribal sorting. This is how you separate yourself from the herd. The herd doesn't comment, because commenting requires taking a position, and taking a position risks judgment. But you're not herd anymore. You're someone who's ready to transvalue. You're someone who's ready to look at the moral operating system that was installed without your consent, and consciously choose to replace it with something that serves your expansion. So comment. Make it specific. Make it honest. Show me you're capable of the self-examination that precedes self-overcoming. And if you want the frameworks they don't teach, if you want the dark psychology of power without the academic nonsense, subscribe now. This channel isn't for people who want to feel good. It's for people who want results. It's for those who choose power over popularity, execution over ethics, domination over democracy. Next video breaks down exactly how to weaponize morality against your competition, how to use their own slave morality as leverage while you operate in the space beyond it. You don't want to miss that, because while they're debating what's right, you'll be capturing what's available. Subscribe, comment, separate yourself. The herd is comfortable. Comfort is death.